forward really quick. There you go. Thanks, Louise. We have a very fabulous team member who's working tech on us. So I want to introduce kind of the star of the show, the reason we're all here because of his amazing work. We have teaching artist Kenneth Jiménez, who is going to be demonstrating and showing us some of the wonderful strategies for really ensuring that we are being intentional about this type of integration. And he's got lots of like real live classroom experience to be able to offer those testimonials and give some tips as well. So a little bit of background before we get started. School Sounds Community Through Music is based in New York City, and the founder, Nina Stern, who is not here with us tonight, but she is a very hands-on leader of this organization who post 9/11 really wanted to bring more multicultural learning into schools. And you can hear more about her story and her reasoning for wanting to launch these educational opportunities on the School Sounds website. All right. So today we are going to explore the value of multicultural teaching. We're going to look at the arc of a multicultural music lesson based on our methodology. We're going to look at strategies so you can be really intentional for how to integrate multicultural music. We're going to look at resources that are readily available to you, so you don't have to have that really, really heavy lift of planning, which we know can be a heavy lift. I was a classroom teacher for 13 years, and I still work in education and know that lesson planning can be a pretty heavy lift. And then we're going to look at highlighting the work of students. But before we do that, let's get to know you all. So if we can just take a minute, Lauren and Brandy, if you wouldn't mind, I'm going to share with you really quickly a link in the chat. And you can unmute. Are either of you familiar with Padlet? Yeah, I'm seeing a nod. Great. So I'm going to send a link here to the School Sounds Padlet. And on that link, can you just share with us what grade level you teach, if you are a specific grade level, or if you serve multiple grades, that's totally fine. And just give us a sneak peek into what type of music we would hear if we came to your house for a family gathering. And I'm going to be refreshing the Padlet over here on my end to see what your responses are. I'm going to add to the board as well. Oh, I can see some people are active in there. I don't know if you've seen the new updates in Padlet, but there's a little figure that shows that someone's typing. And feel free to add a photo or any type of visual asset to your comment. I have to do some spell correction here. All right, so I'm going to add a photo to mine. Okay. All right, I'm looking over here at the Padlet and I see, there we go. K5, music and choir. If you came to my house, you'd hear Ben Folds. Mumford and Sons, 90s rock and electronic music. I love that. I don't know which one of you wrote Ben Folds, but I did a recent project with him. He is as awesome as his music, so very cool. I wrote that I mostly taught K-4, and if you went to my house, I am from a family of eight siblings, so there's 9 kids, and my mom, the matriarch, she loved Elvis. And so to honor her, after her passing, we always play Elvis during family gatherings. All right, I still see some typing there. All right, we've got K-6 music. The music you would hear is rock and roll, George Strait, Leonard Cohen, John Prine, Parliament, and James Brown. Awesome. I've got some huge George Strait fans in my house.
Yeah.
And my siblings, I've got a lot. They range from like country to jazz to R&B, like everybody kind of likes different genres.
Yeah,
So
Led
awesome.
Zeppelin.
Yeah. Oh, my daughter just learned some Led Zeppelin on the guitar and piano, so we've got that going on in our house.
Rhiannon Giddens is my new favorite lately. I don't know why.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'll be quiet.
Love that. No. We love the conversation. So which one of the, so you were the K-6 music, Lauren? Okay, awesome. Great. So, well, thanks for letting us kind of get an insight into what might be going on, what kind of sounds we might hear in your house. I know that instruments are a big deal too. I think about instruments that I heard growing up in my household. The piano was a big one. Alongside that piano was my grandmother's very squeaky voice singing. She didn't have quite the vocals, but she didn't care. She sang anyways. All right, so let's keep moving through. We've got some others joining us. All right, so we're gonna kind of start before we get with Kenneth's demonstration. We're gonna just kind of cover the research. So I know that teachers have a lot of priorities these days, and sometimes to kind of introduce new things into curriculum, we have to have that evidence to be able to share with our peers, administrators. Also, we just want to make sure we're doing things that are evidence-based. So I'm not going to read through all of these, but I just want to point out a few of the things that research tells us. So when we introduce multicultural music, it's not just the music itself. It really tells us the story of how cultures have contributed to society, to jobs, to history, and not just the music profession. So there are ways to recognize people, historical events, and other aspects of history that really have really strong connections with cultures. And music is a really good vehicle for opening up those opportunities and those conversations. And the other thing that I wanted to point out for what the research says is social and emotional learning is a really hot topic right now, and CASEL has really developed a strong framework for understanding the social and emotional competencies. And one of the things that the arts brings, and when you intersect the arts with social and emotional learning, there is so much opportunity there for skill building. And so a couple of the competencies that I extracted there are relationship skills and social awareness. And so when we can integrate these multicultural opportunities, it is just a deeper, it's a deeper opportunity to be able to connect with those around us and those that are not around us. It gives us a greater understanding of the cultures in our community and in your wider community, and then expanding beyond that. And so if we're thinking about how do I build relationships with students? Well, music can definitely be one of those avenues, whether it's collaboration in an ensemble. You know, you mentioned you teach choir, so that's a really great opportunity to build relationship skills, and also that self-awareness. You have to be able to know and understand when to be on cue, when to follow your direction, when to listen to your peers. So the research also tells us that, hey, you can intersect music with the arts. It's a really good way to really enhance those skills. And then the other piece of research that I really wanted to highlight is just that meaningful representation, that when we have students who grow up in different cultures than us, or perhaps we want to be able to gain a greater understanding of another culture, when we bring that representation in, it helps, you know, it helps unpack bias, it helps us understand others. And it really highlights just like how wonderful and beautiful different cultures are, and how our own culture sometimes too takes a little bit unpacking, because, you know, we live in it. Like, we live in the culture that we live in, and sometimes it helps us realize things about ourselves. So those are some of the main points that I wanted to highlight, but there's definitely a lot of evidence there for how we can look at really positive and constructive ways to bring in multicultural music. All right, we're getting to the good stuff. Before I move on, are there any questions about any of those, anything that I have covered so far? All good. All right. So School Sounds uses a very specific type of strategy in all of their resources when it comes to multicultural music integration and enhancement. And so the strategies that you're going to see us use tonight are strategies that we can recommend to you all, because all of these strategies have been tested in the field, thousands and thousands of students. And so if you're kind of searching for that approach that might be effective for you, this is the approach that we use. So, and these numbers that you see, 1, 2, 3, 4, when Kenneth is doing his demonstrations and you know, workshopping ideas with you all, you'll see that I've coded some of these with these numbers, so you can tell where the strategies are being applied. So the first, you know, approach and strategy that we use is to make self to culture connections. And that might be geographically, that might be musically. So all of the lessons and materials really try to start really close to home with you. And so we may do that by showing a map, making kind of understanding the distance between us and that culture, or where we may have traveled. We look at flags, we look at songs that maybe have been popular or they've heard from one of their parents or on the radio. And so that's the first thing, is we really like we always start with that self-connection. The second strategy is curated listening sessions. This is a really fun one, because who doesn't love a playlist? And so, and we know that kids know how to make playlists very well. So a curated listening session that is very representative of that culture. And you have opportunity there to play original versions, and also ones that perhaps have been remixed or updated to modern times, to show how songs have longevity. Songs tell stories, songs have history. And so those curated listening sessions are an opportunity to access history and the past, but also you know, show how even songs from long ago are relevant today. The third one is teaching multicultural music with strategically selected songs from the culture or subculture. So you have, you know, you've introduced it, you made those self connections, you've curated listening sessions, and now you really have to be intentional. okay, so we have this culture, we have this music, but how am I really going to take it to the next level? Because we know that listening, when it comes to Bloom's taxonomy and higher order thinking, listening is a really strong skill. It's a skill that students need, but that application part is where they really start to gain deeper meaning. So we'll dive into those teaching strategies for when they start to apply and learn those rhythms and learn to play instruments. So that's really important aspect. And then lastly, we want our consistent strategy and all of the approaches is that kids need a chance to showcase what they have learned. They have been practicing. It's like, rehearsing, and you're rehearsing to get on stage. So whether that stage is in the classroom or on an actual stage or in the community, or even as we use a lot of times Padlet. So uploading audio files or videos or pictures demonstrating, that we have learned this. And so that's one of the things that we want to emphasize is that if you are teaching these songs and these rhythms and you're learning instruments, let them showcase what they know, because that's kind of the full circle moment for a musician, is to be able to perform for an audience. All right. And this is kind of how the flow of the flow that we take with those strategies is we like to explore. That's where we do things together. We learn something, and then we go on to perform and share. And you'll see all the resources that we share follow this exact same model. Okay, now I'm going to pass it over to the best part. So Kenneth is going to demonstrate some of the approaches and strategies that we use for one of our series, or one of our units, which is Alegría. And I'm going to mute and I'm going to let him take it away.
Hello, everyone. My name's Kenneth Jiménez. I'm a bassist, composer, and educator. And I'm originally from Central America. I'm from Costa Rica. And I came to the US 14 years ago. So a lot of my upbringing and my first years of music education was linked to learning, of course, music from Latin America. In Central America, we get music from like everywhere in Latin America. We get music from the Caribbean, from Mexico. We get music from South America. So since I was a kid, grew up kind of exposed to all of these things just by being there. And then now it just kind of feels very natural and really amazing to be able to teach the Alegría Musical course for school sounds, which is a program that was created by two of our teaching artists, Eri Paz and Juanma Trujillo. They created this program, then we started implementing it in different schools in New York City and kind of adding on, expanding on the curriculum a little bit. But pretty much what the course does is it starts taking you on a journey through Latin America, where you implement all the strategies that JoDee was talking about. We spend a little bit of time in each country. We learn about culture, we learn about geography, and then of course we have a musical objective to learn a little bit and to then implement and showcase. So maybe I think we wanted to start by showing one of the resources that we have on the website, which is this video that was done with puppets. So of course having puppets and the whole video makes it kind of specific for a certain age group, especially the little ones.
And I just wanted to add something about the puppets. So while this unit is like specifically for K-3, puppets may seem, to age out at some point, but if you connect, STEM concepts to puppetry, puppets are actually very complex systems. And so if you are considering ways to integrate some sort of visual arts into these multicultural opportunities, building and creating puppets are a really good STEM or STEAM, STEAM, opportunity, because it takes lots of like trial and error to get those puppets right. If you go to any musical theater stage where there is a puppet, there are teams of engineers trying to figure out these puppets and how they play a role and how they move and stuff. So while this is targeted for K-3, don't completely dismiss the fact that puppets are actually really good resources for a visual arts integration opportunity. All right, go ahead, Kenneth. Or is it the video?
No, I just wanted to add that yes, absolutely. Like creating this character is also, they have specific names and they look a certain way and they talk a certain way. They have both our teaching artists, Juanma and Eddie, are the ones handling the puppets, and all these things are meant to like have the kids kind of, a lot of them identify with the puppets. They come throughout the videos. It's always the same two characters. So I think what we wanted to do is kind of give you a little bit of an example of how to use this material, or at least how I use it in my teaching. And then maybe we can start by just watching the introduction to the video. Do you have it, JoDee? No.
Louise is gonna hit play.
Okay.
Oh, there she goes. All right, all the way to the beginning. Yep.
Friends, welcome, or bienvenidos, as we say in Spanish.
Can you repeat that?
Bienvenidos. Bienvenidos. Before we talk about music, let's introduce ourselves. I am Pepe.
And I am Tito.
I am from the island of Cuba.
And I am from Venezuela.
If you haven't noticed, we're puppets, so we can only move our hands like this. Unless a human helps us.
What are you doing? Wait, what are you touching my hand? Oh, that's weird, Tito! That is so weird!
The name of our class is Alegría Musical, Latin American Stories.
The word alegría means joy in Spanish. And the word musical is the same in both Spanish and English. So the name of this class is Musical Joy.
Excellent, thank you. It cracks me up every time seeing them do their arms like that.
So yeah, the video starts like that, just already. We already started the lesson without kind of even being fully aware of it, because of the music in the background. It's already playing kind of like what the musical objective of this video is, which is to expose yourselves to son cubano, which we're going to get back to, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that. But right off the bat, as the puppets start introducing themselves, we're already starting to listen and get familiar with the style of music that this particular lesson is about. So then we talk a little bit about geography, and JoDee has the strategies up here that we kind of use when we do this. And yeah, the 1 and 2, right? Okay, perfect. So we're talking this first one with the flags. We're using strategies 1 and 2, where we're talking about the introduction to self-culture and geography. We start by talking about the flags. If you can go back to the flag slide. We start comparing them, the Cuban flag and the Puerto Rican flag, which in New York City, which is where I do all my teaching, you're going to see especially a lot the Puerto Rican flag. So a lot of the kids already kind of like, oh, it's really similar. So we start talking about it. We talk a little bit about what a lot of my students also like have Puerto Rican heritage or were born in Puerto Rico as well. So we start already talking a little bit about that, and also talking a little bit about geography. In this case, we start talking about the Caribbean, and we start talking about countries in the Caribbean, like Puerto Rico, like Cuba. We talk about Cuba being the biggest island in the Caribbean. We kind of keep talking a little bit more just to kind of find ways for the students to connect with the culture a little better. So we talk sports. In the video that you can see that there's like this clips of kids playing baseball. We talk about how that's the most popular sport in Cuba. We talk a little bit about food, the same way we did the exercise where we said, okay, if we would come to your house, what music would be playing? We kind of do the same thing, like what would you normally eat when your family gets together and they cook, what some traditional meals from your country. So we talk a little bit about those things. And then as the lesson progresses and we get into that musical exercise, which we can go to the next slide. And now what we're going to do right now is we're going to do this exercise of just having an active listening session together, which the goal of this is going to be to try to identify the instruments that we're listening. So JoDee, how could we interact with that? We do it on Padlet.
I think that they can add to the chat as they're listening. They're answering those questions, which is what instruments do you hear and what personal, geographical, or musical connections can you make with the culture? So you all can just add your reflections into the chat, and I'll post those questions in the chat.
Perfect. So we can listen together.
En el barrio La Cachimba se ha formado la corredera. En el barrio La Cachimba se ha formado la corredera. Allá fueron los bomberos con sus campanas, sus sirenas. Allí fueron los bomberos con sus campanas, sus sirenas. Ay, mamá, ¿qué pasó? Ay, mamá, ¿qué pasó? La Cachimba se ha formado la corredera. En el barrio La Cachimba se ha formado la corredera. Allá fueron los bomberos con sus campanas, sus sirenas. Allí fueron los bomberos con sus...
Perfect. So I already see some answers here. I wanted to ask you, are any of you familiar with this band? Maybe you can write in the chat. Have you heard this band before? Okay, I hear Latin percussion and trumpets, timbales, horns. Cool. So this is a style of music called son, which is spelled S-O-N, son cubano, and it's a style of music that it was already popular in the island, but it became popular worldwide in the 1920s after this band that was kind of famous, Tito Puente. No, it's not. Tito Puente is Puerto Rican, so that was the other one. But we have a class where we talk about Tito Puente, so and actually I believe I read in the chat that we wrote timbales. I believe there's no timbales on this track either. But so I was saying it became popular in the 1920s after this band, what's called el Septeto Nacional, which means National Septet of Ignacio Piñeiro. He was the founder of the band. He was able to come to these world fairs and sent by the Cuban government to go kind of represent Cuba, and he brought the band and they played son, and then the rest of the world heard it and they loved it. And that's when it kind of became really popular. Then they were invited to another world fair in Chicago. Then recordings were made in New York in the early 30s. And that's when son music kind of started going around. Now this band we just heard in particular is called Buena Vista Social Club, which is a really famous band. This recording is from the 90s, like mid 90s. There's a really cool documentary about the band too, if you want to research a little bit more about it. And actually, I can say this now because it's official, but one of our teaching artists that helped design the scores is playing at Buena Vista Social Club Broadway show that's going to open up in New York pretty soon, where they kind of go through the whole history of how this recording session was made. So some of the instruments we hear in son cubano, which we try to identify when we listen together, are a trumpet, there's guitar, there's tres cubano, like the number three, tres, and that one is, it looks like a guitar, so they're kind of nice to compare and contrast. So trumpet, tres, guitar, maracas, which some of you wrote Latin percussion. Absolutely, there's maracas, and there's claves, which I have right here, and that kind of leads to the most important thing in son cubano, which is the clave. And in a lot of Cuban music, it's centered around a clave rhythm. Now, we discovered that playing the clave through Zoom has some strange technological thing that I think it's AI or something catches that frequency, and then you cannot hear me play the actual claves. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to replicate the rhythm of the claves, which are these. I'm going to play it in my guitar so we can hear it. And that would be the objective, the musical objective of this lesson on Cuban music, which it would be to learn this clave rhythm. And the way we teach it is we go about it with the numbers. We think about it in two sections, 1, 2, and 1, 2, 3. And it sounds like this: 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. So at that point, we just want the students to be able to hear it and process it. We don't really need to get into like details of like, how to notate that clave. A lot of this music come from oral traditions. So I think the approach that we want to have when we teach them too is to try to be as authentic as we can and try to just teach it through repetition and through listening. So we just get them familiar with that clave pattern, which is, again, it's split in two halves, 1, 2, and 1, 2, 3. So 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. So the exercise we would do then is they get to play it on the claves, but also they get to play it on top of the recording that we just heard. So maybe as an exercise, we can play a little bit of that, just the beginning of that piece. And now you can write on the chat if you can identify that clave pattern in the recording. And if you can, maybe we're all muted, so maybe try to clap along with it.
Ay, mamá, ¿qué pasó? Ay, mamá, ¿qué pasó? El cuarto de Tula le cogió candela, se quedó dormida y no apagó la vela. El cuarto de Tula le cogió candela, se quedó dormida y no apagó la vela.
You have a nice fade out. Can you identify the clave pattern in there? Let's see, I'll read your answers in the chat. So just as an exercise, you can play the track and just hear for that clave sound, which is that kind of high pitch. And you're always gonna start thinking about, they call it being like clave conscious, just like being aware of it. So start always knowing that it can start 1, 2, or it can start on the 3 side. It can start 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, or 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. But this would be kind of an example of what we were to do. Of course, kind of like a brief, fast version of what we would do with this first unit of Alegría.
And that share piece is, you know, we know that all schools have different policies for student rights in terms of video, audio, all of those things. And so, obviously, like if you're thinking about sharing more publicly on a platform like Padlet, make sure that you have those permissions. But other ways to do that are to do recordings of like audio recordings and not identifying any students. Also just kind of taking pictures of like their hands, maybe doing it or just videoing the hands. So those are ways to showcase what they're doing to kind of build your own portfolio of artifacts of student work that they can reference and they can see, because we know that it's a way for them to really feel proud about themselves in terms of all of the hard work that they have put in. So we really like to encourage that aspect of sharing, which is performing and documenting.
I'd just like to add that it already kind of gets us into performance, like ensemble playing. So one thing I like doing with my students when we start playing that is maybe I'll accompany them with the guitar and we can play along together, and then we're already starting to use all these new skills about being in an ensemble and like being a part of a band. So we would just try the same 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 3. So the same exercise, and they start processing the clave pattern, and also we're already playing music together.
Awesome. Okay, so I think I'm gonna switch over and do my screen now for sharing, if that's okay. Okay, awesome. Let me make sure I'm on the right one. So what are some of the starting points for how to do this? Obviously, you have your own curriculum that you can adapt or remix, or you know, you have your own ideas for how to do that. Sorry, switching over screens. And so what I want to show you right now are some of the resources that we have before we kind of go into a Q&A session. So School Sounds has like ready-made resources and playlists for you where they have worked alongside their teaching artists to make sure that they are curating really quality and tested multicultural music opportunities. And so on their site, if you go to learning resources, there's a teacher section. And if you scroll down, there are different units that you can start to explore. So we've got Alegría, which is the unit that we just talked about. And one of my favorite things about that, if I go to the Cuba lesson, is all of these Alegría lessons and the recorder unit and all of the others will eventually all have Google Slides for you. So you can queue up these activities when you need to. So I'm going to click on here, and I want to show you one of my favorite features in the slide, which is also in the actual lesson plan. Where'd it go? Right here. So what I love about the slide is, you know, it cues up your objectives, but this travel diary. So a travel diary is basically like a passport, and it's one of it's a really nice way to hold yourself accountable for ensuring that you are integrating multicultural music, but also it's an artifact that kids can reflect on and document and take with them as they travel through this musical journey with you during the school year. And so it's just a PDF, it's printable front and back, it folds just like a passport. And so we definitely encourage a resource like this because you can start to, you know, really kind of sell the idea to them that like we're actually going to travel this year musically, and we're going to visit countries, and we're going to learn about the music from these countries and different facts as well. So that's one of the resources that I really love. And something that I really like too about this, the slides option for everyone is that the videos are already in there for safe sharing because Google Slides do not show ads. And we know that YouTube videos can be kind of risky. And if you put them into a Google Slide, you avoid that. And then in the actual lessons, though, if you're on the actual lessons page and you pull up a video, you're going to see the videos pop up in Safe Share. And so we know that, we want to make sure that we're sharing media responsibly with students. And so one measure that School Sounds has taken is adding the feature of sharing the content through Safe Share. So you don't have to, so you can avoid all of those like very random and unexpected ads that you are just not age appropriate for students. So that's one aspect that we really love as well. And so I'm going to go back really quickly and just kind of touch on some of the other units. There's jazz for grades 2 to 5. And all of these are taught by School Sounds teaching artists. And when you watch them, like your students will feel so connected to their personalities. They kind of feel like special guests that you get to meet and witness and revisit every time that they come into the classroom. And a lot of them use humor, which always goes a long ways with kids. So we've got New York Stories, which is really like focused on subcultures within New York itself. Recorders Without Borders is a whole unit where you learn rhythms as you travel around the world. And then ukulele, same concept, and then more jazz 6 to 8. And then we have Ya Habibi, which is the newest unit available. And so on top of that, I just want to highlight some of those features. So when you are ready to like queue up a lesson, you can reinvent and make your own, but also know that these resources are available to you. They are completely free to access. Several of them already have the Google Slides for you to queue up. They all have Google Docs if you need to kind of copy and paste into your own lesson plans. We have the Safe Share and YouTube options, and just know that every single one of these was written by a teaching artist, and it is tested and, definitely approved by all of the students that have interacted with them when they have introduced these lessons. So hats off to Kenneth for doing a lot of that piloting in schools. Because you really are a really amazing educator and musician, and he's kind of tested these things for you all. So hats off to him. And now I think we're just going to take some questions in the chat if anybody has any questions. Or you can unmute. To be honest, there's a small crowd here tonight, so let's see. All right, we got a thank you. Oh, you're still at school. Okay. Yeah, you should get home. Thank you. Thank you. Give some wait time. I just realized the room behind me is getting very dark. How's that? Okay. All right. Well, thank you all for joining us. There will be a recorded version of this up by tomorrow, I believe. So if there are any parts of the workshop that you want to reference, you can definitely do so when we post that to YouTube. So it's always accessible. Those strategies are accessible, as well as some of the things that we referenced. All right. Thank you so much, everyone. Bye, Lauren. Thanks for being here.